People ask the question like, hey, my value just came in low. What do I do? And people will just say, hey, you got to go find another property. There's nothing you can do. If somebody is saying that, that is so untrue. Again, originators, loan officers are not taught this stuff. I spend a lot of my time on the phone coaching people who have had low appraisals and they're trying to figure out what to do because many loan companies are basically built on churning or pumping out loans. I take a lot of phone calls from people who are not on my team and not at my company because at the end of the day, a veteran is getting served and a veteran is getting helped. Nobody's telling you that this is actually possible. They just tell you, well, we can't negotiate, so we're gonna go back on the market, or we're gonna go find another house. So your VA appraisal just came in below value. Here's what you do next. Hey guys, my name is Major, and I wanna share with you what you should do if your VA appraisal comes in below value. This video is going to kind of be mostly for loan officers and realtors. But if you're a veteran, your appraisal comes in below value and somebody tells you that, hey, you just need to go find a different house because the seller's not willing to come down the value and there's nothing that can be done about the value, that is simply not true. Okay. And I'll tell you this, sometimes people go to these online lenders and you Google somebody or something like that. You can't find any other information on them except the fact that they're willing to give you a pre-approval letter just like that. Okay? And if your transaction goes perfectly smooth, you probably will have nothing to worry about. But the value of a lender comes when things do not go well. Okay? Anybody can do lending when everything is perfect, but there are situations that come up that you really need to have somebody with you that's going to fight for your interests and know the process to getting certain things done. Look, this is just like marriage, okay? Anybody can be married and have fun in marriage when there's romantic evenings and long walks on the beach and all that stuff. That is great, and anybody can do marriage at that time. But if you've been married 18 plus years like me, you know that there are some days that are tougher than others. And in lending, it is no different. There are some days that are absolutely tougher than others, and you have to have somebody with you that's willing to navigate this and fight for your interests when you're doing your VA home loan. Everybody needs to understand, loan officers are not necessarily taught these things that I'm going to share with you. So I will tell you that the average loan officer does 1 to 2 VA loans per year. I can't think of a single thing that I do 1 or 2 times per year, and I'm actually good at it. And that becomes a problem with VA loans. People think they're just worrying about guidelines and stuff. You really have to know how to navigate things when things start going south. That's why if you're a realtor, it really matters who you work with, especially when you're doing specialized loans like VA loans. What's the loan originator's experience in this? What are we going to do if the value comes in low? And I will say, and I have consistently said, that if you're a listing agent, accepting a VA offer is likely the best opportunity that you have to get an at-value appraisal. You can go look at my Instagram and my other videos where I explain that, because if somebody really knows this process, they have the ability to argue or debate the value of the property and get that value raised. If you're a veteran or if you're an active duty service member, choose carefully who you choose to be your loan officer, because if you run into a situation like this, you really need to know what to do and how to manage the situation. I'm actually going to go through it. I have conversations with loan officers all the time about, hey, my value came in low. And I'm actually in groups with loan officers and realtors on Facebook and social media and different forums and stuff like that. People ask the question like, hey, my value just came in low. What do I do? And people will just say, hey, you got to go find another property. There's nothing you can do. Reconsideration of value don't work or something like that. If somebody is saying that, that is so untrue, okay? If you have comparables that are actually higher than or at the value, you can have a lot of success with a ROV or reconsideration of value and going to the VA. So let's talk about the VA appraisal process and how this works so that you're informed about how the steps work together. All right, so first thing, the lender orders the appraisal after you go into contract. So when the lender orders the appraisal after you go into contract, there's a timeline for when that appraisal is supposed to be back to the lender. The VA appraisers are the only appraisers who have a defined timeline for when they have to have that report back to the lender. This is published on the VA site, what the timelines are for each area. And I'm not going to go through it, but there are certain days, a certain amount of business days that the VA actually operates on based on where that property is located and the amount of appraisers in that area. Usually, that timeline is between 7 and 10 business days for most areas. Some areas you're at 12, 13 days, but the VA appraisal does not take a long time. If the VA appraiser does take a long time, the reason it's taking a long time is likely because the originator delayed in ordering the appraisal, not because the appraiser is actually taking a long time to do it. That's number one you need to understand. They order the appraisal and then the appraisal comes back. If the appraiser is having a problem justifying the value of the property or the value of the contract, okay, on that home, the appraiser will issue what is called tide water, okay? It is a tide water notification. That notification goes from the appraiser to the originator, okay, or to the lender. That notification goes from the appraiser to the originator, okay? This is before the value is actually issued on the home. When you get tide water notification, it's not necessarily a bad thing. The appraiser is actually saying, hey, there are some things that I might be missing here. So before I issue a value on this property, can you please let me know what you saw, what comparables you're using, or what upgrades were done to this house where I can get closer to your contract price. Basically, he or she is telling the realtors to justify the purchase price on the home. This gives the realtors an opportunity to argue for their value. This does not happen on any other appraisal process. Conventional USDA, FHA, non-QM, if you're doing a bank statement loan or something like that, doesn't happen on any other loan product except VA, and is required by law. Okay, so there's a Tidewater notification that goes out. The lender then notifies the realtors, hey, we have 48 hours to submit comparables to the appraiser for them to consider. The realtors will go and they'll look at, hey, closed sales. What comps did we use to justify the value on this property? And they will submit it to the lender. The lender will then send it to the appraiser to consider in their valuation of the property. Next thing that happens, the appraiser then sends the value to the lender. They basically upload it into the VA portal. The lender has to go into the VA portal and then see what the value is. The timeline for that, once they get the comps from the appraiser, the timeline for that is about 48 hours. Okay, so that's the process for how this works in order to get the appraisal. Now, once you get the appraisal, there, by the way, Tidewater does not mean the value is going to be low. Okay, Tidewater means the appraiser needs some help. We've had many times where we've gotten a Tidewater notification and the value came in, and because of the realtors being outstanding at arguing their case, the value came in at or above the contract price. Many times that has happened. So Tidewater is not a reason to freak out. By the way, if you're the veteran or you're the service member, you may not even know about Tidewater notification. Okay. Sometimes I do not tell the service member because really there's nothing that the service member can do about it. I just don't tell them. Why? You start losing sleep for nothing. You know, there have been many transactions that we've closed and there was a Tidewater notification. Me and the realtors took care of it together and you never even know about it. Now, the next thing that could happen is when the value actually comes in low. Now, and you've noticed like I'm minutes into this video and haven't gotten to what to do when the value comes in low because, again, originators, loan officers are not taught this stuff. I spend a lot of my time on the phone coaching people who have had low appraisals and they're trying to figure out what to do because many loan companies are basically built on churning or pumping out loans. They don't really take the time to argue an appraisal and do what's in the best interest of the veteran. Okay. I take a lot of phone calls from people who work for other loan companies and people who are not on my personal team. I have 45 loan officers on my team. I take a lot of phone calls from people who are not on my team and not at my company because at the end of the day, a veteran is getting served and a veteran is getting helped. So we take the time to walk them through what they actually need to do. At the time that the appraisal comes in and the value is still low, here is what needs to happen. The originator can then do what is called a reconsideration of value. We call it an ROV. Now, this is important because you might say, well, the appraiser already told you that what the value is. There's nothing to be done. And there have been many loan officers who've gone back to the appraiser and said, hey, did you consider this, this, and this? Or we think it should be higher because of this. And they are told no, because the appraiser said, hey, I've already done my job. But the VA loan is the only loan where you can go above the appraiser's head and to their boss. This is called the RLC, or Regional Loan Center. Every single area in the United States has a regional loan center that basically governs property valuations. So if you want to challenge the appraisal of a property or the value of an appraisal, the loan originator can put a package together and submit it to the RLC. I'm going to spend the rest of this video telling you how to submit this package to the RLC, because realtors don't know this, loan officers don't know this, and God knows veterans don't know it because nobody's telling you that this is actually possible. They just tell you, well, we can't negotiate, so we're going to go back on the market, okay? Or we're going to go find another house. And nobody's telling the selling agent, and this is on the selling side too, nobody's telling the seller of the home, the veteran that might be selling a home. You might have taken an offer because, hey, I'm a veteran, I'm selling my own house, and I want to sell my house to a veteran. I did that when I sell my house. I will tell you, when I sell my personal homes, veteran offers get preference because I want to sell to another veteran. I'm a seller, I can do whatever I want. And you, as a veteran seller, can do whatever you want. You can say, hey, I'm going to give preference to VA loans. You can do that. So you might have said, hey, I'm going to give preference to a VA loan, and you're trying to sell your home to a veteran, but in actuality, nobody's telling you about the process if you're in the situation where the appraisal comes in low. So let's jump into this, all right? Number one, you're going to need 4 things in order to submit to the Regional Loan Center. Again, you're not submitting this to the appraiser. You're going above their head to the Regional Loan Center, okay? You're going to submit all of this stuff electronically in an email, okay? Actually, in the notes of this video, I'm going to put a link to the RLCs, okay, to where you can find what the email address is when you're submitting the reconsideration of value. In fact, in this video, I'm actually going to link where I put some draft documents that you can edit in order to build your case for a reconsideration of value. Why would I do that? Because I'm going to have the conversation with you anyway. I might as well give this stuff to you right now and not worry about it. This is a folder where there's going to be 4 documents in there where you can submit your reconsideration of value on behalf of your veteran, because anything we can do to help a veteran is a good thing to do. Number 1 is going to be the ROV cover sheet. Okay, this really has 4 things. This really has the case number, which you received when you ordered the appraisal. This is general information. Remember the loan officer's number, the point of contact. There's like 4 things on this sheet. Self-explanatory. Let's throw that one out. The second thing is going to be the veteran's request. Okay, one thing important about ROVs to note is that the veteran must request the reconsideration of value. Okay, if the veteran does not request a reconsideration of value, it cannot happen. So the veteran writes a letter. Now, this letter can be, this is really up to the veteran. Sometimes I say, hey, I'm going to type up a letter. You're going to DocuSign it. Okay, and they DocuSign it saying, yeah, I'm requesting a reconsideration of value. Sometimes the veteran or the service member wants to tell their own story, which is fine. Okay, they want to tell their story to the RLC. Okay, now I will say this: when you're telling the story to the RLC, do not get into a situation where you're bashing the appraiser, you're bashing the VA process, you're complaining. No, you do not want to do that. You want to be as objective as possible. Okay, who you are. You can talk about your service to the country. You can talk about your family situation. You can talk about how much this house means to you. You can be extensive in that process, or you can just say, I insert your name, request reconsideration value of the property at insert address, DocuSign, and move on. Either way is fine. The third thing that you're going to need is a letter from the loan officer. Okay. Now, this is where the loan officer, you really have to do your job in conjunction with the realtors. Okay. This is going to kind of be a joint document here. You're going to lay out, basically you're requesting reconsideration of value. You're going to lay out all the factors, things that the appraiser may not have considered as they were appraising the property. Okay. Now, I like to do a narrative. Okay. The fourth thing, by the way, is a supporting document, which is a appraiser grid. If you've ever seen an appraisal, there is a grid that is in the appraisal. I'm going to put an Excel document, that is one that me and my team uses when we're doing an appraisal. So I'm going to put an Excel document in the folder that I am linking in the notes of this video. I'm putting an Excel document in there. You can download it, you can edit it to your preference. Now, a couple of things, okay? Document number 3 that I'm talking about and document number 4, the grid, is going to kind of work together. Although I will tell you that the VA says in the VA lending handbook that the grid is not required, okay? The VA lending handbook says the grid is not required. However, I want to do the RLC's job for them. I want to make a plain argument. So we use our grid on every single ROV. You might have success doing an ROV without the grid, okay? But we complete the grid. Sometimes the realtors complete the grid for us because they might know more about how much more a specific item, how much more is a metal roof over a shingle roof, how much more is the fact that this has a lake view and this one doesn't have a lake view. So in the appraisal, there are certain things that have markups, okay? So you start with the subject property and you are comparing it to another property, and this property that you're comparing to may have things that are better or worse. So you might have additions or subtractions that make it comparable to your subject property, the property that the veteran's buying. So you put all of this information in a grid. I'm going to put an Excel document in there. And then in document number 3, the letter from the loan officer, I'm going to add a narrative that explains what I'm saying, okay? I might say, hey, the subject property is 2,600 square feet. However, this comparable is only 2,200 square feet, but the appraiser did not give additional value to my subject property compared to this comparable that was used. You really have to think like an appraiser when you're doing this, okay? This takes time to do. It takes effort to do. But if you're gonna do VA loans, you should be willing to put the time in and the effort in order to actually help veterans. You don't need to just originate loans to get paid, okay? That's not what we're here for. We're actually here to help veterans get into homes if you're actually passionate about the VA loans. If you just want to get paid, why don't you just go do conventional and FHA loans? Just don't do VA loans, okay? I was in a forum one time and one of the loan officers responded and said, well, that's just a lot more work. So we should just tell the veteran to go find another house. And I responded and I said, please do not do another VA loan again, because you don't have the heart actually to help veterans and fight for what rightly belongs to the veteran. A couple more tips when you're doing this grid, okay, and when you're doing your narrative, okay, your loan officer narrative, because this is your document to the RLC. A couple more tips. Don't be sensational or emotional in the document. You want to be factual. You don't want to get into drama. Don't say, I talked to the appraiser said this. No, that's not what this is for, okay? After the deal closes, then you can write a letter to the RLC making your complaint about the appraiser if something happened like that. You want to be very objective in this document. I have found that the RLC wants to say yes to your ROV. They want to say yes. However, you're going to have to give them the data to help them say yes and the methodology. You want to make sure your comps ideally were closed in the last 6 months when you're doing an ROV, okay? Also, you want to make sure that the comps are reasonable, okay? Are they in the same subdivision? You know, if they are outside of that subdivision, was this subdivision 3 years old, but this other subdivision is 15 years old? That's a age of the house there. There's a huge difference there. So if you do that, you want to account for that in your markups on your grid. So you want to account for this stuff. You're going to have to think objectively about this, okay? Don't make grandiose assumptions as you're putting this together, okay? You want to make sure when you sign your name at the bottom, you want to make sure you can say, you know what, this is something I support and this is something I stand by. Now, you want to consider in your comparables 3 comps, if possible, that were not used by the appraiser, okay? Ideally, you want 3 comps that were not used by the appraiser, unless you have one large comp. Let's say your value came in at $400,000 and there was a comp that closed at 440, and you're trying to get from 400 to 420. There was a comp that closed at 440, and that comp closed at 440, but the appraiser didn't consider it, and that comp was closed prior to the appraiser appraising the property. Okay, you can't include comps that close after the appraiser appraised the property. The other thing is, if you're trying to compare other properties, if the appraiser has opened a door to make an exception for something, then you can make that same exception. Let's say when you're deciding what your comparables should be as you're doing your reconsideration of value, and you say, well, crap, I have a property right here, but it's technically 10 miles away from where my comparable property is, and it's not in the same area. Well, if the appraiser opened the door to that, maybe they selected a property as a comparable that was 10 miles away, 11 miles away. You can make that same methodology in your ROV. Let's say that the appraiser went outside of 6 months to grab a comp. You can go outside of 6 months also, and you should put in the narrative, hey, note that this comparable property was closed X amount of months ago. However, the appraiser in their methodology used comp number this, which was also closed outside of the 6 month time frame. So if they open a door to do something outside of the guidelines, okay, or outside of the normal guidelines, you should also open that door. And if they open the door, you should walk through it and live in that room. Okay, that same methodology you should use. Look, this has gone a bit long, but I want to go through this. Okay, so I'm actually going to put draft documents to a folder, okay, that you as an originator can access. If you're a realtor and your appraisal comes in low, I'm actually going to help you get your value up. You got to tell the loan officer, like, hey, are we going to do a reconsideration of value? Your loan officer might not even know what a reconsideration of value is, okay? That's a real thing. Okay, because I talked to many loan officers who don't do ROVs. There's a good friend of mine I have. He spent multiple years, 5 years, in a call center environment where he helped people purchase using VA loans. And he calls me up when his VA loan came in low, his appraisal came in low, and he says, hey, Major, how do I do a reconsideration of value? And I said, man, you've been doing VA loans for 5 years at this other company. How do you not know how to do a reconsideration of value? He said, well, at that company, we didn't do them. We just told the realtors they had to negotiate, and we chucked the file out. If they didn't want to negotiate, then we just moved on to the next file. We were about churning them out. That is sad. If I think about all the veterans who missed out on arguing for their value, arguing for the appraisal, and they walked away from homes when they could have been in homes, and we could have helped veterans also sell homes also, because that's your right, that's your entitlement that you've used or that you've earned from serving your country. Hey, look, there's a lot here, and I probably haven't covered everything. And if you're a VA loan person, you do a lot of VA loans, you probably will pipe in and say, well, Major, you said this, you should have said this. You're probably right, okay? But this is the 95% solution, and this helps move us as an industry forward, as a real estate industry forward, to get the information out there to help another veteran get what they rightfully deserve. So if this has helped you, comment in the comments below. Shoot me an email. So this is my email address right here. You can send me an email. Say if you have a question about this, or you have a question about something I said, if you need help with your ROV, or if you want to go deeper into ROVs, let me know. Look, as originators, as loan officers, we have to do better at serving our veteran community and at serving the realtors we support. Now, if you're a realtor, you're seeing this for the first time, and you want to work with me and my team on VA loans, okay, because we do them fast. We close in about 14 days. Hawaii, a little bit longer because they're on Hawaiian time. We close in about 24 days in Hawaii, but our average closing time stateside is about 14 days average. Yes, we can close in 8 to 10 days on a VA loan. We can do that depending on the state. And we actually service 46 different states. So if you want to partner with us to serve veterans in your area, please shoot me an email. I'll be happy to partner with you and talk about how we can work together to serve the veteran community. God bless you. Hopefully you learned something. And I'll see you next time on Major Money Matters.